Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Daylight Savings. Wasn't that fun this morning? I'm Niamh Whelan-Reiter. I run the Adult Ed here with David Kovacs, and today we have a session on Bat and Bar Mitzvahs. So we are delighted to have our very own Rabbi Ari Moffic, who is a short-haired sister also. And we also have, we're going to split this discussion into two. We also have Chad and Leslie Shifrin, who have been through the Bat Bar Mitzvah process twice already, and we'll be doing it one more time. So we thought it would be good to get both a perspective from the rabbi and then also perspective from the parents. I'm going to hold questions till the end, if that's okay. But feel free to join in or note down your questions as you go. So it'll be a bit of a quick fire round because we've got 45 minutes before we dive into the second part of our scheduling this morning. So with that, Rabbi Ari, tell us, what is a Bat Bar Mitzvah and why is it sometimes called a B'nai Mitzvah?
Okay. So in the time of the Talmud, the rabbis called 13-year-old boys bar mitzvah. That is the status you got by turning 13. And it means son of the commandments. And for the rabbis, that coming of age, that turning 13 meant that you were an adult Jewishly. That meant that you could be a witness for a wedding, for another occasion, that you were trustworthy in that way, that you could help lead a service, that you could fast and participate in the holidays, you could comfort someone in a time of sadness, you could celebrate, that you were religiously an adult, like an adult within the community. And so to mark that coming of age, your status changed to bar mitzvah, and you would participate in the service. At the time of the rabbis, it involved probably the Torah service, participating in the Torah service. In more recent times, girls, 12, 13, 14-year-old girls have also started participating in the ceremony. And of course, you know, the ceremony has changed dramatically over the last 2,000 years of what we do to mark this coming of age religiously, culturally. It looks different in different communities across the different denominations. And, you know, you don't have to do anything to become bar bat mitzvah. You just turn 13. And then it's just a matter of how you want to mark that coming of age. The reason that we've gotten away, or a lot of communities have gotten away from saying bar or bat, is because we now know that there are more than two genders, and I think a lot of people are trying to open up that gender binary, and of course we have non-binary young people, and just to be as inclusive as possible, you'll hear congregations at Mishkan, we say B mitzvah as an initial. And of course, every young person then can say, like, they're having a bar mitzvah, they're having a bat mitzvah, I use she, her pronouns, whatever it is. But we call the overall program B mitzvah, or sometimes congregations call the overall program B'nai mitzvah, children of the commandments.
And I'm going to ask a question on the B'nai, just on the B'nai mitzvah. If you, and it's kind of a double question. So, do you have to do it by yourself, or if you do it with someone else, is that also called a B'nai mitzvah?
Okay. Okay, take it off and just hold it. Okay, gotcha. Right. If you have your service with another child, then it really is a B'nai mitzvah, the children of the commandments, or Benot mitzvah if it's daughters.
You mentioned 13 as a coming of age. Do you have to do it when you're 13, or is there an age requirement? Is that the minimum? Can you talk a little bit about that? Can anyone do it at any age?
Right. Within more traditional circles, you'll see girls especially have this coming of age at 12. Within, I think, Reform Conservative, it's often 13. I would say somewhere between 12, 13, 14 is a typical time that kids mark this ceremony. Of course, you can come to the Torah at absolutely any time of your life. So, you know, parents, caregivers, extended family, if you feel like you never had the chance to come to the Torah and want to read Torah, go for it. You know, I mean, you can always read a verse whenever your child's doing it too.
Excellent. Can you talk a little bit about the service itself? So the B'nai Mitzvah service. What are the main elements? What's the general flow?
Okay, so generally, we read Torah in the Jewish community on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So you really could have a B mitzvah service on a Monday of a long weekend or a Thursday, but typically they're Shabbat services. There'll be a Shabbat morning service, so it's like a 10 to 11 o'clock service, something like that, and followed by brunch or whatever you're doing. Or some people like to do a Shabbat evening Havdalah service, which is the beautiful twisted candle and the spices. And that's kind of a nice way to end the Shabbat. And that's like, I don't know, a 5 to 6 o'clock service or something like that, followed by dinner or your reception. So those are kind of the typical times to have them. And some people want to have it on a Friday night, which is also totally fine. And it's a chance for a young person to have some period of study where they've kind of solidified the Hebrew reading, learn the core Shabbat prayers. They can chant their verses of the Torah portion of that week. We study Torah so that they can write a speech interpreting what this all means. They often share a little about being an interfaith kid and what that journey's like, what the ceremony means to them, how proud they are to be able to honor their Jewish story, their Jewish heritage in that way. It's a chance to get everyone who adores this young person together for like a day of total love and celebration. It's a very, very happy day. We do the prayers and the songs, and also then they kind of know these core Shabbat prayers for their life forever. So, once you memorize the Ve'ahavta, you kind of got it, and you don't, soon forget it. And then, who knows where their lives will take them, and they'll have a feeling of belonging within kind of the global Jewish community to say those prayers.
You mentioned Shabbat service. Does it have to take place in a temple, or can it take place anywhere?
For us as a community, it's sort of hard to find a synagogue building, a standing building where we would have it. Although Sukkot Shalom and Wilmette will rent their sanctuary, or they have been doing that. But I think most families have it in whatever place you're having a reception. So a restaurant, your backyard, a fun location, pinstripes, or I was at last night. Truly, wherever we can bring the Torah wherever, and you can create sacred space wherever we are. We create the sacred space because of the people gathered, not always just because it's in a beautiful setting. But there are so many event spaces now, and where it would feel fine to have it.
No, that's great. Did you play on the whirly ball afterwards?
No.
Is there? I like this idea of creating a sacred space. Is there, as the interfaith families, we always ask this question: is there a role in a B'nai Mitzvah service for another member of the clergy, for a priest or for someone else? And if yes, how do you make that work?
Yep. We definitely always acknowledge that this is a young person who's been blessed to have life cycle events to honor both sides of their family and their whole story. And this is just one very important part of their lives. The whole family participates. Anyone can come up to the Torah, dress it, see it, participate in any way, offer readings. We often put in some Christian readings or interfaith readings that are also very universal that everyone loves. And yes, a priest could come, and sometimes Father Kusik or Father Hurley have been to a few, but I would say mostly not because of scheduling, and it's hard to schedule. But yes, I mean, if there's a priest who's been very important in your family, who's loved this kid, who wants to give a short homily or a message or a blessing, great.
You've mentioned the Torah a couple of times. So where can families get a Torah? I know we have one in the family school, but how does that all happen? How do they arrange that?
Yes, you all have a Torah, a beautiful Torah, a heavy Torah, great Torah. So, the Torah is available to you. It's just a matter of coordinating and making sure there's not two ceremonies like at the same day, which I doubt would happen. But if I'm officiating, I can bring the Torah. If another clergy person that is officiating, maybe they have a Torah, or we can coordinate. I can give you the Torah. So you have a Torah. You have access to a Torah.
Perfect, because that's a big question. Other question then, I know several of us here have done Bat Bar Mitzvahs either with individual children or as a group. How many, or what is the ideal number if you're considering doing a joint service? What's the ideal?
Yes, I mean you could definitely do it with a few kids in the class, a few friends. 3 or 4 is awesome. I mean, it takes some of the pressure off of them. It's so sweet for them to see a couple of families coming together to work it out in that way. There's no wrong number. A group b'nai mitzvah is absolutely lovely.
And I don't think have we ever done a class? Maybe when the classes were small, did we ever do a class one, or is it more?
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. I think you answered my other question, which is, do you have to officially be members of a congregation in order to have your child go through a bat bar mitzvah?
No, you don't. And some of your families are members of congregations of synagogues, and that is great because maybe you participate in Shabbat and holidays with the community and adult ed and Torah study and other things. Maybe your child does youth group or something in a synagogue, but it's hard often to coordinate with a synagogue because your kids don't use their religious schools and Hebrew schools, and maybe there's rules around a child having to say that they are only practicing one religion at that point, even though B mitzvah is not a proclamation of faith or anything like that. It's simply marking this occasion that they've reached this coming of age. So I think it is maybe hard for school families to have the ceremony in a synagogue, although Makom, where Evan is, that would be totally fine if you wanted to do it as part of a congregation. But I would think for almost every single school family, they're not doing it through a Jewish synagogue.
And one last question before we shift over and talk to Chad and Leslie. But you said it's not a proclamation of your religion. So on the Catholic side, we love certificates. So we get a certificate for your baptism, for your communion, for your confirmation. How do you prove that you went through a B mitzvah? There's no certificate, is there?
No. Right. Although we did talk about maybe making one, so you could. I mean, yeah, but it's a certificate's always nice and great. No. Hold on. Technical difficulties. Okay. Pause. We're back. Yes, you become B mitzvah. So, I think we often say, like, did you have a bar mitzvah? And it's really like you became B mitzvah, and then what did you do to mark that occasion is really what the question is. And hopefully your young people will come to Torah many times in their life. So this is like a very exciting Shechianu moment where they come to the Torah as this, as a B mitzvah, but it's not necessarily a one-time thing or anything like that. And I think sometimes people say, like, was it a real B mitzvah? And that's kind of, there is no real, I mean, they're all so different, whether you'll go to all the different synagogues, they're all a little different. Sometimes students read a verse of Torah, sometimes they're reading 3 aliyot, 3 sections, sometimes they just want to give a speech in English, sometimes they want to do a mitzvah project or a social justice project. There is absolutely no right way to do this, and that's really the fun thing, is to think creatively about what would be meaningful to you and this young person.
And I suppose I should ask the other question, which is everyone. Lots of talk about the party or the celebration after. That's not an official part of a B mitzvah, is it? But can you talk a little bit about that?
That's right. You are so not invited to my mitzvah. Right. I think, yeah, right. And young people have just boiled it down to my mitzvah. Are you coming to my mitzvah? The party, right, like I think culturally maybe they're, because of media or whatever, or because they see it and they can go to them. The parties vary so much, right? There are very, very fancy parties and all different things, but a lot of times people do like to have a DJ and dance and have fun and play the games, and it's just all about whether you're keeping, your values and whether they're loving it and having fun and feeling good and feeling supported and feeling happy. There are all different ways to mark the occasion. Sometimes families want to go on a neat trip or take a few of their closest friends on some kind of experience, or maybe they're kids who love big parties and want to host everyone. You'll know your kid and what they want and what will be possible and meaningful to you.
Excellent. All right. And I'm not excluding you from this part of the conversation, but I am going to switch gears and introduce Chad and Leslie Shifrin. Thank you for volunteering to be the guests today. You've been through this twice, as I mentioned, once during COVID or coming out of COVID, and then once completely out of COVID. And in full transparency, we did do a service together twice. Good luck on your third one. But can you talk a little bit about the services that you did and how those came about?
Yeah, well, let me say a couple of things first before I answer that. One, thank you, Rabbi Ari, for being here. It is so nice to hear from a rabbi rather than us as to what to do. So I just think it's so good.
Last week, so there's so much wisdom.
Yes. To Niamh's here, she's like a fact checker because we did this together twice, so I can't make anything up. I want to make two other points as I was sitting here thinking about being in your seats before we did the Bar and Bat Mitzvahs, because I'd really had two questions, and it's really one: should we do this? Because I don't have the data, but not every family does a Bar and Bat Mitzvah that joins family school. I think most do. Don't quote me on that, but should we do it? And two, okay, if we're going to do this, how big of an endeavor is this? You know what? Maybe it's just too much work. Forget it. So let me just answer those real quickly, and then we'll get to all the details, at least from my point of view, what I would have wanted to hear. The first is do it. That's just my advice. Obviously, everyone do your own thing. For whatever reason, it's like the other milestones of baby naming and baptism, and then the second first communion that we do. There's apprehension, and you're not sure, but there's something magical about whatever we're doing here at family school and our clergy and everything else, that when you do it, at the end of it, it's like, oh my gosh, thank goodness we did that. And the B'nai Mitzvah, I think, it's heightened a little bit, at least it is I'll let the Catholic side talk, I'm obviously the Jewish side, that there was a lot of apprehension whether we should do it or not. And I'll just tell you, now that we've done it twice and we're going to do it a third time, that I think collectively, and it's what most families, I haven't found a family who's like, big mistake, shouldn't have done that. So just so you hear this, that everybody's really happy they do it. And that apprehension, of course, is very real, and especially at the grandparent level too, and the whole family, and who should we invite, all that stuff. But the experience we had, that I think most families have, is do it. And secondly, on the intimidation factor of how much are we taking on, the short answer is we're here to tell you there is a playbook. It is not that much work. It is all we have. We should have brought the prayer book. If it wasn't for this hour and I had that extra hour, I would have remembered to bring it. But the book's there. Rabbi Ari, or whoever you use, but use Rabbi Ari, who we did. She's the best, obviously. We used Todd Kessler for the cantor, who's incredible. Just absolutely adds so much to the service. His spirit, his voice, the whole thing. Everyone, just so many compliments afterwards. Anyway, there's a playbook. It's easy. Do not be intimidated by it. With that said, those are the two things I'd want to know. You guys can ask questions, but answer the question.
Let's do the tutoring. Leslie and I might question the easy part of it, but it is. But there is a playbook.
There's a spreadsheet.
There is a playbook. Yes, your children do have to learn Hebrew, so I'm not sure if I would call that easy, but there's a lot of work that goes on there too. Do you want to talk a little bit about the B'nai Bet Mitzvah service and the pieces of it and how it came together? So let's talk. Maybe we'll start with the tutoring.
Okay, I might be off on some of this because I feel like Chad kind of organized that, but we had a tutor, Judy. It was all done on Zoom. We never met Judy in person.
And a year before?
Yeah, maybe a year before. And the kids just did it once a week for 20 minutes. And then they had some homework kind of in between. And so she totally got them ready. And I think she helped us create the booklet and everything and who was doing what.
Yeah.
So our first one with our daughter, who's now a sophomore, it was in 2021. So, and there were three kids or three families we were doing it together. And then our second one, Molly, who's now in 8th grade, that was a year ago, there were two of them. So, that was sort of, I don't know what else I'm forgetting probably.
Yeah, I would just say, one, do it with other families if you have that opportunity. It just makes it more exciting. 2, Judy, there's others like Judy, but just for people like me that just go back to when I got bar mitzvahed, the technology is so much better. It's so much easier. They figured out how these kids are going to learn and be able to read Hebrew without having to do like a deep dive and spend a ton of time. It's truly what Leslie said. Judy Jury spends 20 minutes a day with a week with them, and she provides them with these like videos or whatever it is online. The kids do it quietly. They don't even, at least for ours. They didn't want us to know. They're like, don't worry about it. We'll do it. And you just trust the process. Judy does a great job. I mean, for us at least, everyone can do different levels you want. But for us, our kids just figured out how to read and get through it and do the prayers, and it was totally fine. So.
And the good thing about doing it with, and I know there are people who've done it. You guys did it, I think, by yourselves, right? But it does take the pressure off. So you get to divide the service up and get to divide the prayers up, which is also, it doesn't mean that they have less to do. They have an equal amount to do, but it's just, at least it feels like you've got someone to share it with, which I think was great in both cases.
Can I say one thing on meaning? Right. It's hard. Did you all see this movie? You're so not invited to my, yeah. So, the scene where she's chanting Hebrew to the ceiling, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like just so painful. We don't know, it's so hard because it's biblical Hebrew, prayer book Hebrew. We don't speak modern Hebrew. They don't know what they're saying necessarily word for word, but we do meaning, right? So we want this to be meaningful. So we do as much of like, what is this about? What did you just chant? How do you feel when you say these prayers, so that hopefully there is some meaning and connectedness with the Hebrew, but you are memorizing quite a bit.
And I would also just say, while the Hebrew class here provides the foundations, it is absolutely not enough. So you do need to do other lessons, and that's not the purpose of the Hebrew class here either. The Hebrew class here is really designed to give you the foundations. So you do need to do it. Leslie, this is a question for you. Did you think about getting a priest to co-officiate, and if, maybe answer that one, and then we'll talk about how we incorporated elements of both religions.
Yeah, I was definitely like the hesitant person about the mitzvah in general. Like, I think from the very beginning when we had kids, I was like, we're not going to do that, I don't know, maybe just fear, and maybe just also not understanding that it wasn't like this declaration of something. So I kind of went into the whole thing, maybe you didn't even notice, kind of just not sure like how much, I don't know, I kind of let Chad do most of it. I think just because, again, I was scared. I didn't know how it would be, and I don't know. It was also COVID, so no one's in a great headspace. And it ended up kind of being, because of COVID, it was very small because it was Memorial Day weekend of 2021, and it was like literally the week going into it, it was like, okay, we can only have the grandparents. And then that week it was like, oh no, you can invite your siblings, like, and the cousins, So it kept it kind of small because of COVID, and that was comfortable for me. But then it was so amazing that then this last time we did a bigger, everything was bigger. Yeah. Now going into our third, he's in 4th grade, but I'm already like, we're going to have a huge party with it. Like, I want like the DJ, and I want all the things. So I don't know, it's kind of been funny how I've totally turned. We're going all out.
So
yeah.
It's a blowout party on the third time. Third time's the charm. So we did not have a priest at. I remember having that conversation. You and I had that conversation. Did we want a priest at the first one? And I think at the time we had both said that perhaps Father Bernie Peterzak, who unfortunately has passed away since then, would have been an ideal officiant, but because of COVID and everything else, we did not go ahead with that. But I do have a question. I'm projecting now. But obviously, bar bat mitzvah is similar to confirmation, or you do it at the same time. So do you have, are you doing confirmations, or what did you decide with that?
We haven't. Mostly just, I don't know. Didn't figure it out, and I don't know. And I think we've decided we're not doing it either for our kids. And
And I feel like the B mitzvah probably it's not
Yeah.
a substitute, but I feel like that was the milestone for 12, 13, which
Yeah.
is what which is what the time you would do your confirmation to. You can, if you want, do a confirmation, so that we do partner with, David, what was the detail David gave? I think with the partners group that's here, you can do a confirmation program. So if you really want to do a confirmation as well, you can work with partners, and they do classes. It's a big commitment. I think they've got lots of constraints. You can only miss 2 classes, et cetera, et cetera. So you can do it, and you can work through the partners organization to do it if you wish.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the service itself then, like the components, the big components how did you bring in the interfaith piece?
That sounds like a question for Rabbi Ari, but no.
We did some.
Well, we had like the prayer
had
of
some-
St. Francis
yeah.
Assisi was in there, or there were a couple of like you put in. I think one of the first times did we put in the Our Father? I can't even remember. We said
I think we did.
We had.
I feel like we did.
We definitely had music that was that brought together both faiths, and Todd Kessler, our cantor, was super accommodating about that. Remember, he learned he make me a channel of your peace.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
We do. We chant the Ve'ahavta in Hebrew and English. Almost all the services, or the ones I do, we do, because then we can say we love God with our mind, with our heart, with our soul, which is such a shared blessing from both the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament. We did a prayer from Mother Teresa. We did the prayer of St. Francis. The kids talk about being interfaith. The whole thing is acknowledged throughout. So I hope that family on both sides feels comfortable.
Yeah.
Super practical question: where'd you buy your talit?
Oh, yeah. Grammy bought it for them online. I'm not sure.
Everything's easy now. It's
Some
online.
a
Just search
website
for it online. We
they
found the
could pick.
websites.
Yeah.
Girls got pink ones that, whatever.
Yeah.
They're loving it.
Yeah.
You went to Rosenblum?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a Judaic store in
Yeah, that's-
Dempster.
Yeah.
Up that way.
Yeah, there is. You're right. It's on Dempster. Yeah, so there is a Judaica store up in, I think it's kind of Skokie, Evanston, Skokie. It's, but if you look it up, you'll see it, and you can go in, and they were super helpful there, and they've got a whole range of prayer shawls that you can choose from. You do have to have a prayer shawl, and actually that was one of the ways we incorporated. Like, I was going to ask you how you incorporate, or how did you make both sets of grandparents feel included?
Well, that's what I thought. I would have answered for the Catholic side of things. Is the readings?
You go.
No,
do
right.
the Catholic side.
Yeah, let me do the Catholic side. The readings from the Catholic grandparents and the Catholic other side of the family got up there and participated, which I think is
Yeah.
an important part. Obviously, the music that was mentioned in other aspects. But what was the other question? I
No,
missed.
so we brought both sets of grandparents
Yes.
came up and did the. You want to talk about that? The shawl, the prayer
Put-
shawl.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
put it on.
Yeah, so the talit, there's a little moment in the ceremony, and both sets of grandparents went on, and they've got your kid in front of them, and they have a little moment together and put it on together, and little hugs and kisses, and everyone's happy. It sounds silly, but it works. The ceremony is really good. It's really meaningful. The other part I just want to add to the meaningfulness that Rabbi Ari was talking about is the other task that the children will do, and they work with Rabbi Ari separately from the parents. So again, no work for us in this way, that Rabbi Ari meets with them on Zoom a few times before the Bar and Bat Mitzvah. So one, they do understand what they're doing. They do learn about what that Torah portion is going to be, and figure out a way to have that be meaningful to their lives today. And then they give a speech at the end. And the parents give a speech too, and it's short, but it's just, like I said, we all do this, and it ends up, the magic works. It's really meaningful. It's really nice to stand in front of everybody and say something nice about your child. It impacts them. And to watch our kids when they are hitting around this age of 13, to put together their thoughts, at least with our kids, they won't share their speech before they do it. Rabbi Ari had seen it, so it was vetted. But they share their thoughts, and whatever that is, it's just great to hear and see how they're developing and becoming these incredible people that we're spending the time in this class to give them this foundation, and it's a nice moment. So
And I love the fact that you said there's a magic to it. There is a magic to it. So the first time we did it, we had most people on Zoom. So we had a massive projector in the back of the room. And so for that prayer, the Talit, my parents couldn't come because nobody could travel from overseas at that point, but they still felt like they were part of it. But I was going to say, just as you were saying that, there is something magical about it. So for the second time round, my mum did come over, and just seeing the three grandparents, be so proud of their grandchildren taking this milestone. And again, you're right. It sounds, as you listen to it, you're probably thinking, oh gosh, they're so sentimental. But actually, it's super touching. We've got like amazing photographs. And you do need a photographer, by the way. We didn't mention that, but don't forget a photographer. It's kind of like a wedding. You need a photographer before, during, and after.
And just note, that's coming from the Catholic side. That to me is the most important to take away. No, because it's intimidating to do this, like Leslie was saying, before you do it. So I just want to make sure that's...
Yeah. I'm going to ask you your personal favorite moment of, like, as you look back on that, what was your, like, favorite, oh my gosh, moment? I just gave you mine, which was the Talit.
I think maybe just like for us, particularly the second one when everyone could be in person, we were at Sukkot Shalom, which is just like, if you haven't been there, it's just the most welcoming place ever. And I think just like looking out and seeing all of our family who, we have the range of like very religious Jewish to very religious Catholic and everything in between, all being there and like loving it. Yeah. And it was like back to our wedding where, we had the priest and the rabbi and everybody just was like, this is so beautiful. I don't know, just kind of, I think all the people there, the important people in your life that you every so often get to have these functions where they're all there is so special. So,
I really do think like this is one of the gifts religion gives us is an ability to, pause occasionally and mark our time with meaning. And the holidays are so important for that way and these rituals. But this is really, it's a really emotional day. And, I have a 9th grader and 11th grader, so we just did them too. And I have to say, like, saying to your kid, like, please God, let this child know goodness and happiness and make good decisions. It's like a very, very happy, emotional day. It is a lot of work to get there and stress and, kids will stress out and depending on their personalities. You have to stand up there and you're kind of shaking and chanting Torah. It's like a little weird, but hopefully like the goal, like my goal is like, yes, that they just feel showered by love on this one day.
Chad, did you have a different moment from Leslie?
No, I like all those moments.
You like all those. Okay, I'm gonna add one more, which was one of the things that that Rabbi Ari does incredibly well, and we got a ton of compliments afterwards. Was she explains all of the different components of the service, and I'm gonna tell you something that I think is really amusing is that all of the Jewish guests came up afterwards and said, well, I didn't know that's why there were. And I learned that. And it was, so, again, if you're hesitating, everybody learns something during this service and the why. And it's kind of funny, we've talked about it in previous adult eds, but sometimes when we're, one religion or the other, you tend to just you kind of go through the motions and you don't necessarily know why you do it. Like, why do you kneel here or why do you stand there? But actually, when you get, and you do a wonderful job doing that, which is you call it out, you say, this is why, and this is how, and this is where it came from, and this is the similarity, and that really helps bring it to life from an interfaith perspective too. Okay, I'm going to switch quickly to questions because we've got like 5 or 6 minutes left. Mia, you go.
How long is the service?
Okay, the question.
45 minutes or an hour. Yeah, an hour.
Like mass.
Yeah, like mass. I'll come back to you in a second.
I had a question. You mentioned you're not doing confirmations, but did you do First Holy Communions when they were younger?
So the question is, did we do? We're not doing confirmations, but did we do First Communion? So go ahead.
Yes, and the baby naming baptism and the first communion we did.
And they use their chalice that they make like a cup that can be used, right?
Yeah.
And my comments about whether to do it or not would apply to that. I think that we have obviously had those discussions as well in apprehension, more so on the Jewish side for that, and then if we get to the bar mitzvah, it's more so on the Catholic, and then, probably a little higher apprehension. I think it the stakes get raised as the kids get older, but the experience for both was at least from our experience, it was great. Do it.
You refer to a playbook, is that the family school playbook?
That's my terminology, but the
Yeah, so the question is, do you have what is the playbook and what does it look like? And how do we get it?
I have an answer to the first, not the second. The first question is, what's the playbook? And at least in my mind, that's my lingo of the family we did the first Bar and Bat Mitzvah with. It was their second child. And so we were told there are all these prayer books, programs, whatever, to use for this. But so we had a program that was handed to us. Like, oh, great. And then also there's a spreadsheet of things to get that they had that was passed down to them. So that's question one. Question two on how do you get it? I anticipated that coming up and figured we as a family school need to figure out where to put those.
Yeah.
But I know there are many programs circulating around that are circulating around, and people who are doing this just talk and it ends up in their hands. So we'll figure that out, but that's the answer.
So two things. We will put the playbook, because we have it. We will put the spreadsheet on the resources section of the new website. And we both still have extra programs, which we would happily share out the next time. So we'll bring some, and you can see what that looks like. And we have the electronic version of that, too. All right, we've got 3 questions at the same time. So I'm going to go there, there, and there. Okay.
Just a really quick one.
Yeah.
How long before the date you want to target should you start doing your, we haven't done anything on this.
Right.
So is it a year, 18 months?
So the 4th graders, I was just at Anshe Emet, the conservative synagogue. I can tell you that the 4th graders in the city are going to receive their B mitzvah dates if they're affiliated in a couple of weeks. Crazy. But this is how it works. The suburban 4th graders are all going to get their dates if they're affiliated at 9 a.m. on the first Monday in May. And then if you are unaffiliated and people do want to have like a private ceremony, they're going to look at their classmates and if there are Jewish kids and try to find a date that are, this is not necessary, but this is in the ether sphere. I would say though, if you do want me to officiate like the earlier, I mean, by 5th grade even, because it will be hard to schedule, but 5th grade is a good date to schedule a date and then to start tutoring a year before, something like that.
I would say that depends on your child too, on how quickly and how challenging it might be. All right, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to make a comment rather than a question.
Yeah.
It's just that there are some families that do both
Yeah.
bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah,
Yeah.
and confirmation.
Yeah.
We did that, and we'd be happy to talk to anyone who wants our playbook and how we achieved that. It was not completely easy, but it can be done.
Okay, so just for the recording, then there are families who have done both bat bar mitzvah and confirmation, and they would be happy to share their knowledge and playbook as well.
So you don't have to pick the date the week before or after when you turn 13?
No.
That was a lie told to me.
Some in traditional communities, you might want to go by the Hebrew birth date, which you can look up, and you want the child to be technically bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, which is after 13, but within the spirit of that, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, we had one who was and one who wasn't, so, and I think the same for you guys too.
We did it.
All right. I think-
Like with anything, I'll just say, just turn the dial up or down too for however it works for you and your families and your child and the whole thing. That's the way I would think about this.
I grew up pretty traditionally conservative Jewish. So I had my bar mitzvah in a big community of in our synagogue, and instead of 45 minutes, my bar mitzvah was 4 hours.
Yes.
And just the service. So it's definitely a different kind of tradition to me to hear you guys talk about this. How have you seen other parents kind of resolve that?
Yeah.
in their heads and
Yeah, you're right. You know, you want it to be familiar and meaningful to you as well, and have your extended family also feel so, the children learn the Talib blessing and the Baruch and the Shema and the Ve'ahavta, Avot Imahot and Gevurot, Osei Shalom. They participate in the Torah service. They have an Aliyah. We do Aleinu. We do Kaddish. So are we doing, every single prayer? No, that's in a conservative service, but it is the core of the Sabbath prayers, the Shabbat prayers. So I don't think anyone would be like, oh my, like offended. You know, I'm a Reform rabbi, so I definitely come from a Reform perspective. But if you wanted them to learn Ashrei, yes, I mean, great, that would be amazing. So the more, whatever would be meaningful, I think could be incorporated in, you know, yeah.
I'll just add, I have some pretty religious members of my family on that side too, and their commentary, you know, afterwards was, whoa, I thought it wasn't really going to be real, and it was. And so they found, I mean, to Rabbi Ari's point, it is way closer to a reform. I mean, it is a reform, and back to that dial point. But even at the level that we did it at least for our religious side, my religious side of the conservative Jewish family, they left and had very, very complimentary things that I don't think they were faking it. They meant it. That for whatever that's worth, just to hear that.
Any final questions? I see some costume-clad children in the corridors, so we may have to just wrap it up. But there are, if any of you want to talk to families who've done it, many of us have, the Seradas, etc., they've done it. Yeah. So happy to answer any questions, but in the meantime, Rabbi Ari, as always, thank you for your wisdom, and thank you, Shifrins. Thank you, Shifrins, for your parent view. All right, we'll close it out. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.